Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. My name is Bethany on behalf of Arcarta. We are very excited to be hosting this wonderful panel this afternoon. I guess I do need to give a brief introduction onto my company and what we do, but I'm not going to bore everyone because it is 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon and we do work in regulation for the art market. So that is all I'm going to say about that. But I would like to introduce each of our speakers today, an exceptional group, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy afternoons to be here. First, we have Alesa Boyle. Now, you are one of the co-founders of Trois Crayons. I'm obviously going to pronounce that very badly as an Australian, so I apologise. And
TC works.
TC, thank you. Okay, that's a lot easier for me to say. Perfect. And then also a director of Stephen Ongpin Fine Art. We then have Gregory down the end here. Thank you for being here. You are Senior Director and Worldwide Head of Old Master Drawings at Sotheby's. And last but never least, my dear friend Lorna, Senior Gallery Manager, Partnerships Manager, at Artsy, which is the leading platform for online discovery in the art market. So today we are going to be exploring how drawings, intimate, immediate, and historically personal, are finding fresh relevance in a new generation of collectors. As more of the art market moves to become online, works on paper are not just thriving in the digital space, but they're also reshaping how trust, access, and storytelling play out between collectors and, of course, galleries. We'll be asking why drawings, perhaps more than any other medium, are seeming to resonate so strongly at the moment, particularly with younger first-time buyers. So, to kick things off, TC, thank you. Now, I would like to understand sort of a bit about the fair itself, obviously, as we are all here today. It was created to sort of address a gap in the drawings market, I imagine. And I'd like to understand a bit more about how sort of that was shaped and how you began to sort of think of the fair itself. I know we've got other members of the team here today as well.
Yes, so TC started out as an Instagram account. So Trois Crayons was an Instagram account where we posted drawings that were coming up at auction. And then it slowly began to evolve as we recognized that there was a space in the market in London for a large exhibition devoted to drawings. So Paris, you have the Salon, New York, you have Master Drawings. But London didn't really have something in the summer in that same way. So this created an opportunity for us to show a lot of drawings from really incredible dealers at the same time in the same space. Something that was another kind of contributing factor is that post-Brexit, things started to change and a lot of the European galleries no longer came to London. So it was an attempt by us to not only promote the drawings market at a time when there was an opening, but it was also an opportunity to bring people back to London who may not have come since Brexit and COVID and all of those things.
And were you hoping to invite a different type of collector into a space like TC?
Yes, so accessibility has been a really big thing about what our mission has been. So not only online when it comes to our Instagram account, but our newsletter and the event itself, we really focus on accessibility. For instance, last year we had 17 dealers and 175 drawings. This year there are 35 dealers who have taken part and 261 drawings. And one of the things we did was make a focus on drawings around the £5,000 mark and under. So we wanted to show that there was accessibility, even in a room of really amazing things.
That's really interesting. Introduce my friend. That's really interesting. I think, the price point always matters with these things, of course.
Completely. And so it's nice to have a range. But I think if you only show really amazing works that are 6 figures, it doesn't really show that the drawings community is a very open one and one where you can start as a collector here.
I'd be interested to understand how you've seen that sort of emotional connection to drawing evolve over the last post-COVID last couple of years, and post-Brexit couple of years.
Thank you.
No worries.
Yes, emotional connection with drawings. I mean, I think all drawings collectors have always had an emotional connection with drawings. That's the nature of the field. It's these works are very intimate, very direct, and you're right there with the artist always at the moment of thinking, the moment of creation. So that's always been an interest, and authors write about that from way back. But it's absolutely true that the pattern of collectors who are most active in our field, particularly in the more old master areas, has evolved and changed a lot over the time that I've been working in the field. I think at the beginning, your typical old master drawings collector was of a certain age, sort of like my sort of age, or quite a lot older, and it does exist. And sort of tended to approach it really from a very sort of scholarly, studious sort of starting point, seeing the drawings as sort of relating to the culture that was going on around the paintings and being a sort of one manifestation of a particular culture that they found very interesting. And so many of them were very, very narrowly focused in their collections, collecting 17th century Dutch drawings and not much else, or 16th century Italian drawings or 18th century French. That approach to collecting has really changed a lot. There are very few of the newer, younger generation collectors who go about it in that way. What we are seeing amongst the new collectors who are coming in, and there are quite a lot of younger people looking at drawings and coming into the field, which is a source of huge relief and satisfaction to us, and a venture like TC has been fantastic in helping to support and build all of that. And it's incredibly important to engage people in that way, show them material that's at a sort of entry level in a way, price-wise. But the way they tend to look at things is sort of there are sort of two aspects, and one is just the straightforward visual impact of the work. Immediate reaction either to the image or to the subject matter or to both, you know, before ever really thinking hard about who made it and when and how that fits into art history. And the other is through the process of making art. And that's something that's become much, much more of a subject of discussion in my world in a way than it ever was 30 years ago. We have quite a lot of actual artists coming into our sales. Contemporary artists, some of them very well known, coming and looking at the drawings, studying them, and in a way seeking relationships and patterns and connections between the process of drawing at different times. And that spills over into the collectors as well. You know, you get that extraordinary feeling when you're looking at a drawing, you're looking over the artist's shoulder while they're thinking, while they're working out what they're going to do. And maybe that was 400 years ago, maybe it was yesterday, it almost doesn't matter. And that's an aspect which is much, much more evident now in the discussions and in the patterns and approaches of collectors than it ever was before. So I don't know how much that has to do with our subject today, digital matters, but it's definitely it's definitely a change of pattern.
Of course. Well, no, and again, a good segue into the next question I had about patterns of behaviour when we are looking at a digital first collector. Now, obviously, Artsy, you do have a lot of insight into sort of how people interact and engage with artworks online. Are you seeing that these patterns that you mentioned, are they resident with first time sort of collectors online coming through Artsy? And I guess with the use of digital platforms, and obviously there are wonderful tools out there to help us sort of visualize these artworks up close, even if we're not seeing them in the flesh. Do you think that makes the works themselves feel more approachable for younger collectors in the market?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on Artsy we aim to make all art accessible, but drawings and I think more broadly works on paper, there's a lot on the platform. So it's about 40% of the inventory we have, and then it's about 40% really of the sales happening on platform too. So, I mean, that as a stat in itself really proves that there is a lot of interest in the medium. And that's grown 10% year on year pretty much since the start of Artsy. So absolutely growing interest. First-time buyers, absolutely. Half of first-time purchases are works on paper as well. So, I mean, that's it. The numbers don't lie. There's absolutely growing interest here.
Do you know, I'm sorry if this is a curveball for you, but in terms of the first-time buyer sort of age demographic, do you have what sort of that number looks like? Are we talking about, you know, people in early 30s? Are we talking about younger? Does Artsy have data on that type of information at all?
We do. I don't have that memorized today, so thanks for the curveball. But I mean, we've got buyers in their 80s on Artsy all the way down to those in their 20s that are super starting out. So I think drawings will be bought by a really wide range. And we do a lot of work at the kind of early collecting stage, which I think will naturally be a younger age bracket. So yeah, I guess we can probably say that's the case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I guess moving now into more of sort of talking about discovery in that digital context, going back to you, Greg, again. During your time at Sotheby's, you shared some remarkable stories of rediscovery of drawings. We were talking about it just before today's panel, works that have been misattributed, forgotten, or even quietly passed down through generations.
Never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again in some cases. But in today's...
Until you get them.
until you get your hands on them, exactly. In today's fast-paced art world where digital sometimes leads, a lot of, the way that I consume art is, a lot of the time it is through a screen at the moment. Do you think that we're still creating space for that kind of organic discovery, or is this under pressure from speed and accessibility because everyone is connected to multiple devices at any time?
It cuts both ways, really. I mean, I think the development of sort of skills of looking and real deep understanding of works on paper, of any artwork, can only come from extensive study of the original works, and that's something that's been understood forever. All the people who were interested in learning about drawings in generations gone past would spend their summers going to all the print rooms of Europe or whatever, and going through all the collections, and they would visit all the private collections as well and try and see as many things as possible in the originals. Obviously now we have enormous quantities of collections and works on paper instantly available. Almost every major museum has got its drawings collection fully digitized. You can see the whole lot. And that is good and bad, because digital images are somewhat limited when it comes to looking at and understanding drawings. I mean, many of them are very good, but they're also quite variable in terms of the quality and the accuracy of the impression that they give you of how the drawing really looks. I know from our experience of trying to do these things fairly rapidly for our sales, it's incredibly difficult to get a really faithful digital reproduction of an old master drawing. The way the different media interact with each other gets somehow slightly out of balance. The tone of the paper in relation to what's on it, the ink or the chalk or something like that, is incredibly hard to get right, the balance there. And it can also affect your judgment of condition. Because I know it's certainly our digital photography, and it may not be true everywhere, the foxing that you get in a lot of drawings, the little dots of mould and staining, get exaggerated by the digital image. Almost every single drawing that has foxing looks in worse condition in our online image than it does when you see it face to face. And I think one other thing that is difficult to judge from a digital image is scale. And you can look, a number of times I've been amazed when I go and see a drawing in the original that I've looked at online, and I'm astonished that, I thought it was this big and it's this big. And I've read the, or I thought it was a little thing and it's huge. And I've read the dimensions, I've looked at it, and yet I still didn't really absorb that. You form the impression of what size you think the thing's going to be based on the composition and the technique, and then you can be totally thrown by that. And if you're only relying on the digital images and not actually going to the originals as well, you may not end up building a really accurate database in your mind of images, which is what you need to be able to sort of compare and get things right. In terms of making discoveries, that's fascinating, because again the landscape's changed hugely in that regard, because the whole system, the whole ecosystem used to rely on little provincial auction sales with no catalogue or a little typescript or something like that, and a network of small dealers and runners who used to go around the whole country, going to all the sales that they thought might have good things in, and finding things and buying them for nothing and bringing them up to London and selling them on through the system. And that was an extraordinary sort of structure and network. Now, of course, every sale everywhere, you have fairly good quality digital images of everything that's in it available to anybody. And there's still a lot to go through, there's still a lot to plough through, but the chances of making a really major discovery in that way have sort of decreased rather, because the chances are that someone else will have been ploughing through the same online catalogues that you have. That said, I think there are probably fewer people out there now who actually know what they're looking at in that way.
Okay.
I think the number of people who actually have the level of general understanding of the works on paper to spot the sleeper, as it were, spot the lost work, is smaller than it was 20 or 30 years ago. So yeah, it swings and roundabouts, and those who have got the knowledge have got greater access to the sources. So it sort of works both ways. But if there's one fundamental message, it's that if you want to maximize your chances of making discoveries and of learning really what the artists are all about, look at the originals as well. Start with the digital images, but then look at the originals.
And with TC specifically, you know, it's, in my opinion, it's not a traditional art fair. There's no booths. It feels quite, it feels like you're stepping into the gallery. What was the motivation behind that in particular? Because that kind of like decentralization of the gallery model within a fair is not common at all. And I would like,
it scares most people, to be honest.
It does. I'd like to hear about that, especially when we are talking about sort of the closeness and intimacy and delicacy of drawings, without, and you know, Greg, you mentioned sort of these, I guess, experts, and still having access to the people who, you know, have the drawings themselves. I would like to understand a little bit about the motivation behind not having that sort of, you know, a booth here and a booth there, and you know exactly who the galleries are and the gallery owners are there. What was that motivation?
So a lot of it, you know, we trust the dealers we work with, but what happened was the fact that when we first made the discussion about the space and what ideas we were having, it was like, do we create booths? The problem with that is that we all have these preconceived notions about dealers, and when we go to an art fair, we look and we very quickly make a judgment call. Am I going to walk on the stand? Am I not going to walk on the stand?
Yep.
Do I know them? Do I not know them?
Yes.
How comfortable do I feel engaging?
Yep.
And by eliminating those barriers, it means you have to look at everything. And even for instance, when we did this hang, at first we started kind of the main hall, which is our Meet the Dealers section. There's one work from every dealer in the main hall above us. And then the rest of the rooms, there was initial discussions. Do we hang by, you know, region? Are the British drawings here and the Italian drawings here and the French drawings there? But then again, what you do is you create an environment where someone can say no, because they go, actually, I don't like British drawings. I'm not going to walk there. I don't like French drawings. I'm not going to try. And again, the same thing if you do it by landscapes and portraits. Some people like people and things, and some people can't stand people and things. So you may skip a whole room just because there's portraits. And what we wanted to do is create an environment where you really have to look at everything, because not only do you know who has sent it, but you don't know what it is. All of the dealers' names and their contact information is on the label below, but there's really no defining factor of what each work is until you get to it. I think, even if I reflect on sort of the way that I sort of digest art online, you know, if you do it through Artsy as a good example, you can spend hours just scrolling and you do come across things that otherwise you might not have looked at. And I think similar to, you know, if we refer the digital to this space, it is kind of that similar conversation, you know, you come across things organically, you walk through the room upstairs and you see things that perhaps you wouldn't have stopped at and, you know, pondered before. And I think that conversation with interacting with drawings is really special. And I think, you know, when we do look at it on how we can think about digesting art online as well, it is a very similar. It is. It's kind of like, again, walking through what you would scroll through in a way, because you may not go to every dealer's website, but if they're all collated into the same place and there's 260 there, you're definitely going to scroll through. So in the same way you do here.
Something you didn't know you'd love.
Exactly. That's the hope, is people find new artists and discover new things.
And I guess, you know, obviously the galleries and the dealers who are have brought the works here today to TC or throughout the week, they are present underneath the works, you know, you can find them. But how do we build buyer confidence when there isn't the gallery owner there, or there isn't the dealer there, basically in front, you know, a typical art fair, they're on the booth and they will talk to you if you stop.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. So we look at our kind of what we do is giving you the opportunity to connect with that dealer. We have offered before, you know, there are people who are first time buyers. We'll happily call the dealer for you if you'd like and kind of help create that connection. But I think what we do is we stand behind the people who are hanging. You know, we trust the galleries that are upstairs. And so we have a confidence in them, and therefore when you go to work with them, we trust that that will work. But I think we see that the image leads first often. You know, people are drawn in by an artwork and then they buy. And so whilst the dealer is a very important part of this, and we wouldn't have any of this without the dealers, I think their works are really good and they speak for themselves. And so if we just let them talk without an extra explanation sometimes, it allows people to feel more comfortable who may not have felt comfortable going onto a stand and talking to someone.
Because it can, you know, it can be intimidating.
A bit intimidating.
It can be
completely.
very intimidating, especially if you are a first-time buyer or a young collector. There is that level of, I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to step out of line. I don't want to take them away from an important discussion.
And that's the thing is I think some galleries are really open about there's no bad question. But it's also another reason why we make sure that prices are on the labels, because we find that at a traditional art fair, if there's no prices, it again creates this kind of barrier, which like with Artsy, if you have a price, it helps, you know, those types of things.
We talk about this all the time. Price transparency is so important. Works are 12 times more likely to sell on platform if you've got the price public, so yeah.
And is that's consistent through most of the data?
Yeah, that's across all artworks on platform.
Yeah, it is. It's, you know, I've definitely had that experience myself with, you know, I'm too scared to ask the price, more because I think I'm going to like something so much, then find out I can't afford it and get the FOMO that hits me really bad. So that's my lived experience. But I guess for anyone here who has discovered works online, did anything ever feel lacking to you? I know you mentioned sort of the scale of the work, not realizing the actual sort of size of the piece, but was there anything as part of that sort of discovery that when you were viewing the work online, you were thinking, oh gosh, I really wish that thing was there that's not there through my screen. Obviously the piece itself, you can't touch it, you can't see it, but I think with how well things can be recorded now, is there anything else that you would like to see basically online that isn't there currently?
I can jump in.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely. I think like it's all about the detail and the context, the provenance, all those things, those little elements you were talking about, they are so important to having confidence and wanting to transact on an object or an artwork or a drawing online. So we talk a lot about all the details that you need to include to make somebody want to go, yes, I'm confident in purchasing this without seeing it in front of me. But at the same time, people buy artworks all the time without seeing them. They do it at auction, via phone bidding, online bidding. When I was in the galleries, we would sell works off a PDF and an email. So it's not necessarily an uber new concept. It's just in a different place and space. And I think that's where what Artsy is trying to do, and I think we have already done successfully, is become a trusted platform. And that's like Sotheby's is and TC is, like it is a trusted place where you can go and be confident in what you're getting is quality, it is what it is, etc. So maybe it's less about not seeing it, but trusting the information that you have online.
And is that why, especially for the fair, there is such a strong digital presence? Because like I've been seeing everything online over the last week, you know, even from a social media perspective, it's not going unmissed. You have a website with all the information you need. Is it really, really important to also have a digital arm for that level of accessibility for the brand itself?
Completely. And I think, you know, every single day pretty much we've had a different post which has highlighted a different dealer. So again, we're pushing you back to the dealer, they're tagged, or it's a collaborative post, and if you want to learn more about what they have, you have that opportunity. So it's, you know, it's important to be here, but for those who can't be here, we want to make it as accessible as possible. What's interesting is, you know, with last year being our first year, this year being our second, we have had people say, why don't you have every single artwork online for me to scroll through? Which is interesting. We've done install shots and we've sent people things, but it's interesting how the concept of what we're doing needs to be digital in its entirety for those who can't make it to London.
I know I like to scroll through everything before seeing it in person, so I'll probably be one of those people asking you.
Well noted.
Yes, we can talk next year. Greg, I would love to, from your perspective, when we are considering, you know, younger buyers in the market, or, you know, people who are just establishing their own collections, what are you seeing really engage people in the drawing market today? Is it the provenance on the piece? Is it the sort of scholarship that sits around it? Is there anything that's sort of true to the way that people are engaging with drawings from your perspective at the moment?
I mean, I think there are a huge range of different factors that play into what gets someone excited and hooked by a work of art of any type, but particularly drawings. And lots of them you've mentioned already. You know, it's about the history of the work, it's about the condition of the work, it's about what they do or don't know already about the artists in question quite often. I mean, that's something, you know, there are people who are attracted by something that relates to something they know about. There are other people who are equally attracted by discovering something completely unthought of before, something totally new, the moment of walking into the art gallery and seeing this thing and thinking, crikey, I didn't know that existed. And I've had many of those moments. I said, oh God, I didn't know that there was a, you know, Dutch artist painting views of Oxfordshire in 1650. I didn't know that existed, and then I'm hooked on that subject, or you know, whatever. Or but I think the actual thing that sort of pushes people to the point of really engaging and therefore to the point of actually buying something is different for every single person, and a lot of it is about the question of trust that you mentioned already, Lorna, where they need to feel confident that the person or the organisation or the entity that's presenting this work to them has really checked it out and vetted, particularly for new collectors. They need to rely on that, and you know, that comes in different ways. That can come from the name of an institution, it can come from the fact that, you know, I hope people think that something that they buy from Sotheby's is going to be basically probably more or less what we say it is. And you know, the same for Trois Crayons, the same for the most reliable dealers and Artsy and these places where everything is vetted, or a good fair, a really good fair, Salon de Dessin, Tefaf, these places where the vetting takes place, which is intended to give people correctly confidence to buy whatever it is they see there. And scholarship also plays a part in that, publications. You know, if a drawing has been published by a particular author, or has been in exhibitions, that counts for something. That helps reinforce the confidence to go that extra step. I mean, once you get to know the field a bit better, you start to realise that actually not all publications have the same merit in that regard, and that there are certain books on certain artists which include lots of things that probably shouldn't be in there, and there are, you know, others that left out things that should be in there. But it's all part of learning process. But if you ask around a lot, if you ask the people who really are experienced in the field, you know, whose word can you count on in terms of the experts, whether the people selling or the scholars, then that will count for a lot. I mean, in our case, the only thing that actually differentiates auction from any other process or platform for buying drawings is the sort of the drop-dead moment of the auction, the timing aspect. That focuses the mind pretty well, because people really do have to make up their mind whether they want to take that step and bid or not. And I think otherwise, frankly, all the factors are exactly the same in every context.
Like the abandoned cart, you know, if we are looking at the online perspective, at Artsy, where do you see that point of hesitation? I guess in online sales, obviously with drawing, but there would be a lot of, you know, I imagine you'd be able to see that type of information sort of within the platform as well for galleries, dealers online.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I'm probably going to be a bit of a broken record here, because it's a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about. The first one would definitely be, if you put something up on the platform that has one image and little information, nobody's going to feel confident in buying that. So I'm saying you're not going to have had as high a conversion rate for a listing like this. And we coached for any of my galleries that are listening to me today, they're going to be going, here she goes batting on about that again, because I'm like, put multiple images, put your signature information, artist's career history, and so on. So that's definitely one of the big things that we can like coach and guide you on. The other side would probably be maybe more like the logistics side of things. So with Artsy, we have a guarantee where we will double check the authenticity if somebody flags something, shipping and insurance and so forth. And that's now meant that our average distance between buyer and seller is 3,000 miles. So it's really taken that super international, allowing people to buy works from galleries they would, never maybe have come across at a fair or at Sotheby's.
Yeah, that is a very interesting specific stat. I think
it's a good one.
It's a really
use it a lot.
That is a really interesting. I think that really speaks to the accessibility that digital platforms bring.
Yeah.
But it is true, you can't ever deny what seeing a work in real life is like. Especially drawings. It's sort of the rehearsal before the performance, and sometimes rehearsal is the best part, in my opinion, as a former musical theatre child as well. I guess I realise we are sort of reaching the end of our time, so I did want to ask one final question to everyone here today. If you could place one drawing from any time by any hand in the hands of a first-time collector today, what would it be and why? Big question. Greg, you're up first.
Oh,
Not to put you on the spot.
This is a curveball.
I know, sorry, that wasn't in the pre-approved question
briefing.
list. You can take a minute if
No,
you
that's
need
okay.
it.
British Museum, Rembrandt, Saskia asleep. Fantastic, the most extraordinary wash drawing you've ever seen in your life. 5 strokes of the brush. And yet, everything you could ever want to know about that person, the personality, the pose, the mood. Something which is just fundamentally timeless, and the most impressive example that springs to mind in the 10 seconds I was allowed of
Very sorry.
of the art of drawing at its very best. Now your turn.
I can start with what I know I wouldn't hand someone.
Let's start with that. That's actually that's very
I
interesting.
don't think I would hand someone a pastel to start with, only because
It's messy.
it can be, your fingerprints can get stuck in it, and I don't know if that was the artist's intention or not. So I think, even as someone who has worked in a gallery for around 8 years, unframing pastels and handling them is still one of those things that will stress any person out, even with the best of times. So I think my answer would be what I wouldn't do.
That's a very, very good answer.
Although I love them, they're my favorite. I
They are
just don't think I'd
beautiful.
hand those over first.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you.
I am going to go for Jenny Saville because her show is on at the Portrait Gallery right now, so you can almost have it in your hand if you want to go take a look. I think as a contemporary drawer, a lot of them go back to Dürer and the history of art history and how important his hand works, and she does a very similar thing, but perhaps and a little more accessible to the younger first-time buyer.
Wonderful answers.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all very much for joining today
Thank you.
and for being here on a Thursday afternoon. Thank you to the panel for also putting up with my questions. It was very much appreciated. Thank you.